Hi, everybody. I just wanted to give you a little video for this week. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Walsh's book that we're reading as a part of this course. And really, actually, she has a lot of very similar things to say as Boss does. And they're not a whole lot different, but they do bring a little bit different perspective. And well, first I wanted to talk a little bit about the our last Monday, which was 9/11, and how I saw a lot of things on television and some tributes to the people who were lost in 9/11. And I think I mentioned last week that Pauline Boss was called to do a lot of work with the people at 9/11 Ground Zero, which we're not supposed to be calling it Ground Zero anymore now that they built the memorial and all. But anyway, she was called to go work with the families, and she talked a lot about the ambiguous loss and unresolved grief that these families who were left had felt, and people who worked with people who were lost. And so, any reading that you can do that Pauline Boss has done is really, really good about that, about loss and grief, which has to do a lot with what we're talking about this semester as far as crises in the family and family stress. And she talked, or actually the other day they were saying on the television how there are I think 1,100 people whose bodies still haven't been found, and so you just have to wonder how their families are dealing. I mean, it's hard enough that somebody loses a family member, but then when they never find their body, that's got to be really, really hard for them because then they have a hard time sometimes letting go, really letting go and grieving um, thoroughly. So that's why she calls it unresolved grief. But Walsh talks about shared belief systems and how we grow up, the way we grow up in a family or our culture has a lot to do with how we handle stress and how we handle crisis situations. And there are family norms and rituals. And a lot of times people handle, especially, I mean, I hate to keep talking about death, but it's a good example of sometimes there are certain cultures or certain groups of people, let's say the Jewish faith, for one, have a ritual when someone dies where they sit Shiva, they call it, where they sit for a week and mourn the passing of their loved one. There are cultures that do and religions that do wakes and things like that. So it's different families, different cultures have different ways of handling things. And a lot of times, um, some families don't handle things at all. I mean, I guess even by not handling something, you're handling it in a way. I mean, not doing something is still doing something. I know that sounds kind of weird, but um, they talk. She talks about storytelling and narrative, and Pauline Boss also talked about that a lot when she went to New York City and worked with the families. It was really important for them, she thought, to tell stories about their family members and the people who were lost. And so that was a way that she could help them deal with their grief and their loss a little bit better. It Walsh talks about making meaning of adversity, and when I was watching the on TV the memorial service they had, or the service they had for the memorial that they built in New York City, some of the family members of the people who were lost spoke, and it seemed like so many of them found ways, their own way of making sense of what happened. Maybe they couldn't make sense of it, but they looked for the maybe the silver lining or the gift in their loss, and it brought tears to my eyes more than once when it seems like especially children of people who were lost talked about how their lives have changed in the last 10 years and how they've carried on. And so they've tried to find meaning in the adversity. So, family, different families and different individuals. I've mentioned this last week too, but Walsh talks about this, as does Boss, about how different families may be more resilient than others, and they may bounce back. Resilience is bouncing back from a crisis or an adversity, and some families just handle it better than others. I'm looking through the book as I'm talking, also. Forgive me. Um, the word that jumps out here is hope, and then hope, colon, an optimistic bias. And there are just people in the world who look at things more positively than others. Some people just look for that silver lining. They just sometimes it's faith, sometimes it's just their innate positive attitude that helps them get through things. And I was just listening to somebody. I just went and had my car washed today, and I overheard a couple people talking about how some people just have nothing good to say. It's just negative. And I was on a Facebook conversation, and I really know better than to get involved in this political discussions, but because there's a no-win, and somebody threw out a question, and I usually don't respond, but I did, and then somebody responded to me, and then I responded back, and I was trying to be as nice as I could, but it was like they just took every word I said and chopped it up and took it out of context, and boy, I just ended up just not even responding to the last time, because I just didn't feel like that I could win this discussion or argument this person was trying to have with me, because there really isn't it's not a win-lose situation. Nobody really wins in that. But I got that this person who was having this conversation with me looks at a lot of things in a pretty negative way, and so I really try not to engage, and I felt bad after I did. So anyway, so we look. She talks about looking for the strengths, looking for people's strengths, looking for our own strengths. And so whenever we might be feeling down or in a crisis situation, it's really helpful if we can find the strengths and what's going to help us get through. And I mentioned faith. Some people use prayer or their faith. Some people use their friends. Some people use their family members. Some people meditate. Some people exercise. There are just different ways. But and there's a difference. She mentioned spirituality in here, and there was a difference in religion and spirituality, and there's debate about what that means. It doesn't mean that a religious person can't be spiritual, and a spiritual person can't be religious. But I think that people can be spiritual without being religious necessarily. But they do talk. She talks more about spirituality than religion, and I think that's a kind of a good way to go, because then you don't, step on somebody's toes or say something about somebody else's belief that might be, offensive to them. And so if you just kind of talk about it in a spiritual way, then that kind of allows for a lot of diverse ways, of expressing one's spirituality. So one of the things, and I think I probably mentioned in one of the discussions, but I'll mention it again, is the old saying of what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And it is a cliche, but gosh, I found that to be the truth for me a lot of times. And so I think if we can, help families who we're working with as professionals in family sciences, help families find those positive things, find those strengths, find those, they come to you and they go, oh, it's awful. They go on, they tell their story. And then, you can say, yeah, all that has happened, but you know what? You're still here. You're still able to get out. You're doing the best you can, and try to help them find the positive things and their strengths, because those are the things you can turn somebody's life around in I'll start to say a second, maybe not a second, but a short period of time, just by helping them find the positives that they can focus on. So y'all have a great weekend, and I will check back in with you next week. And I see some people are posting movies, and they're good ones so far. So I hope y'all enjoy these assignments, because I think they're actually pretty cool and hopefully helpful. So y'all take care, and we'll see you soon.